Cool Spot? What are you doing here?
Hey, I thought you killed him in your Cool Spot review.
Who's gonna notice?
As some nerd with a YouTube account, it is legally required I be a fan of various YouTubers nobody but me has heard of. One of these YouTubers is a fellow by the name of Kyle Nordy, and one of his regular series is called Kids Are Smarter Than This, where he reviews bad episodes of kids shows. One of his reviews of the Fairly Odd Parents episode, Let Sleeper Dogs Lie. The reason I mention this review is because his biggest issue with the episode is the bad continuity.
So it turns out despite his mother filming apparently his entire life, he never noticed that he had fairies until now. We of course know that he had Cosmo and Wanda as fairies from the earlier episode, The Secret Origin of Denzel Crocker.
Well, you fucked it up! You fucked it up! Seriously, what the... Crocker was not an asshole as a kid, especially not to his fairies.
Denzel Crocker, today you turn 11, and as the rules state, I must now take your fairies away forever.
Oh, that's weird. Channel Chaser said Timmy would have his fairies until his teen years. And The Secret Origin of Denzel Crocker said he lost his fairies because he revealed they exist.
Hey, dude.
No. You cannot retcon Sparky into Crocker's past too. This isn't a coinkydink. This is cheap writing. How can Sparky have been Crocker's fairy dog at the same time Cosmo and Wanda were his fairy godparents? And how the hell did Cosmo and Wanda not recognize him?
I'm stuck in this thorn bush and I'm not wearing any underpants! Underpants! Must get Denzel Crocker's fairies.
Well, thank God no one said underpants in front of him for the past 30 years.
And we see Cosmo and Wanda get taken away, even though that wasn't how it happened in The Origin of Denzel Crocker.
Denzel! I'm going to do the dance of the 7 veils! Not now, Denzel! Mommy has to run to her second job at the 8-track tape company. It's the music delivery system of the future.
Why didn't you guys say anything? We didn't remember, sport. Fairies are notorious for having bad memories.
No, you don't! You had your memories erased! I saw this happen!
It tries its hardest to ruin an earlier episode.
This even got the episode declared number 3 on his second list of worst things he has ever reviewed.
I've seen episodes that have bad continuity. I've liked episodes that have bad continuity, but none that have brought attention to it this much. You know that we know that the secret origin of Denzel Crocker exists. So you should know that we would know that none of this adds up. Crocker was not an asshole as a kid. He was a little pretentious, but not much else. I mean, he saved Timmy's dad from a truck. In this episode, I can't imagine Crocker doing anything like that. We know Crocker lost his fairies because he, or rather Timmy, revealed they exist. Yet here, it's apparently because he turned 11, even though we know that Timmy will have them until his teen years. Sparky's there because we have to get him in, even though he wasn't in the original. Cosmo and Wanda forgot about Crocker, not because of, the magical mind erasing thing, but because they just have bad memories. We don't even get an explanation to how Crocker forgot about them. They don't take his memory away from him, so he just forgot. Crocker's mom is short in the video, even though in the last episode she was tall in the past. And when we see Sparky's angle, the one he shot, we don't see Crocker's camera, or even someplace it could reasonably be. And yeah, that might be nitpicking, but you know what isn't nitpicking, and something I didn't notice till months after reviewing this and posting the video? Crocker has video evidence of fairy godparents, and he doesn't show anyone. That's his entire motivation. That's why he does what he does, and he's not showing anyone.
I could make fun of this, considering the Fairly Odd Parents is not known for having strong continuity. However, for one, I've angered about continuity in equally unimportant television programs. Okay, guys, this is really bothering me, and I know I may have already mentioned it, but it bears repeating, because this seems to be the central conflict of this, what I could pitifully call an episode. When was Pinkie Pie a bad chef? I'm seriously asking, because I'm thinking through every single episode of FIM off the top of my head. And the only one I could think of where anyone took any issue with her cooking for actual quality with secrets and pies. And even then, that was because Rainbow Dash didn't like pies. It wasn't because they were bad. In fact, I remember her winning a prize by making a giant monster cake back in season 2. You guys remember that? But the other thing I realized was the Fairly Odd Parents does have some form of continuity. I mean, off the top of my head, in Season 2, the Anti-Fairy Zone is destroyed. In Season 5, we see that means a new prison is built. The destruction of the Anti-Fairy Zone is even mentioned by Timmy in that episode.
Timmy, Fairy World Prison is escape-proof.
Ha! That's what they said about the Anti-Fairy Zone. And I got Anti-Cosmo out of there, didn't I?
Sure, that's not much, but it's at least something. Plus, every episode does have some form of continuity. All the characters remember each other, well, most of the time.
Fairies are notorious for having bad memories. Why do you think I call you Sport all the time? I can't remember your name.
And have similar relationships. You're never going to see an episode where Vicky is Timmy's mother and Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome.
My name is Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome.
Doug Dimmadome? The owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome?
Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome.
Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome?
Is Timmy's fairy. From this perspective, every show does have some form of continuity, unless it's a pure skit show like Saturday Night Live. And even then, any recurring character or skit also has continuity. Hence why Matt Foley has the same job, was divorced the same amount of times, and lives in the same place, regardless of which skit.
First off, I am 35 years old, I am divorced, and I live in a van down by the river. Gonna end up eating a steady diet of government cheese and living in a van down by the river. You're gonna be doing a lot of doobie rolling when you're living in a van down by the river. First off, I am 35 years old. I am thrice divorced, and I live in a van down by the river. Once there was a boy who liked to throw things. He started out throwing eggs. Then he threw the big game. Then he threw back a shot of whiskey. Then he threw up. Then he got thrown out of the house. And then he moved into a van down by the river. I better begin by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm 35 years old. I am thrice divorced. And I wish to dear God that I was living in a van down by the river. I had it all. Van, river, the whole kit and caboodle. I know where they'll never find us. In a van down by the river. Was the night before Christmas, and all through the van, your old buddy Matt fell asleep on the can. His children were nestled 2 time zones away with his first wife and her husband in sunny L.A. Matt woke up and realized with a chill and a quiver that he was living in a van down by the river. Young lady, what do you want to do with your life?
I want to live in a van down by the river.
Well, you'll have plenty of time to live in a van down by the river when you're living in a van down by the river.
The fact is, continuity does exist in every show, or at least every show with characters, in order to keep some kind of grounding in that universe. If a show does not have continuity, then by definition it cannot have reoccurring characters or settings. After all, such a thing would establish a universe, and that universe would then have, well, some form of continuity. However, at what point does continuity become unimportant? And I should note, I'm only talking about shows that label themselves episodic. If a show labels itself as serialized, then continuity becomes much more important. However, coming from someone whose native fandom is the Brony fandom, I have seen a number of times where a review of the latest episode was hijacked by unimportant continuity. The Times They Are a Changeling is a good example of this. The episode contains some very clear themes regarding racism. Now, I, as a political nerd, picked up on this during my first viewing, or at least thought I had picked up on something, and was curious to see if anyone else in the fandom had noticed and what they thought. Turns out they didn't notice and instead laser focused on the biology of changelings and how love worked as a resource based on one line. I'm not joking. A number of which were not very good, but that's besides the point. Another example was Slice of Life, the 100th episode of MLP-FIM. An episode I do like, for the record, which got a large amount of praise for being, quote, a love letter to the fandom, without explaining why that made it a good product. Personally, I liked the episode because I found it funny. That's not much of a reason, but it's better than a good chunk of the fandom gave. In a situation like this, I try to follow the enter rule.
If you've asked why to something that an episode presents, you have to ask, why does it matter? If you can't find a good reason, then drop it from your review entirely unless you can make it clear that it's only a personal problem. Nitpicking is not funny or cathartic or cute or whatever. It's annoying and tedious.
Basically, don't be a nitpicking asshole, or don't call what you make analysis or a review. This is why I also don't go after CinemaSins. They don't call what they're doing reviews. They admit to being nitpicking assholes.
We're not reviewers. We're assholes. Sins are often based on things you will neither notice nor will ever care to notice. Just like in Catholicism, our sins can be very minor things.
So, you know what? I leave them alone. However, when is it not a nitpick? Well, in cases like this, it depends on the circumstance. I would like to make a general rule that if you're focusing on continuity over story, themes, dialogue, or characterization, then you're doing something kind of wrong. But wait a minute! Didn't I just say characterization is part of continuity? Well, this is where things get kind of complicated. Because while all characterization does involve continuity, not all continuity is equally important. Something like characterization is unavoidable. And as such, criticizing bad continuity in this regard is not nitpicking. However, when something is barely even mentioned or the solution is obvious, then you're just wasting your time. This is why I gave the biology of change with the tangibility of love example as earlier. As the general rule in Friendship is Magic is that friendship is something mystical that can be channeled into something physical. Nothing like this exists in our world, however, it doesn't have to. It's a fantasy show. It can do whatever it wants. And we have no reason to think love is particularly different. However, that isn't sexy enough. So we have to make 9-minute videos. I'm not making this up. 9-minute videos. Declaring that one thing that's possible in theory, guys. And also the exact opposite of that. Oh, and nobody giving a shit besides you. That's also very likely. The fact is, the exact properties of love, which, by the way, To Where and Back Again confirmed the simple one was right. Hope you all enjoyed wasting your time! Don't actually matter in the long run. As such, while talking about it can be interesting if it's the only thing you focus on over what's actually happening in the story, you're doing something wrong. This is what nitpicking actually refers to, by the way. It's not talking about a small thing that breaks the structure of the plot. Again, to quote Mr. Enter,
and if you hit anything hard enough with a hammer, it's going to break.
It's instead focusing on things that do not affect the plot in any way. Like, say, focusing on one line of dialogue and using that as an excuse to talk about the pony love energy crisis. Basically, if you want to talk about continuity in an episode, that's fine. But it should be in response to something the episode brings up. Not because you had a random thought while watching it. If it's an MLP episode about the physical properties of love, then obviously talking about it would make much more sense. However, when a much more important issue is staring you in the face, then please talk about that instead. It's especially funny because if you were to actually inject real continuity into the times they are a changeling, The episode's themes kind of are filled with unfortunate implications and fall apart extremely fast, but we can't talk about that, guys. No, we had to focus on whether or not love was physical, like oil or coal, or it was mystical, despite the fact it's always been portrayed as mystical. And for those wondering why I'm not talking about these issues, well, go to the description and find my Medium blog and my Twitter and my book, and you'll see me talking about several serious issues. But you know what? Maybe I should be talking about it here as well. So join me next time when I take personality tests or something. I am Ephrom, and good night.